So welcome everyone to the conversation on the ethical use of technologies. As a coach, very excited about where we're going in this conversation. One of the things I sometimes say is that I like to geek out on ethics. Unsure, those of you that know me, if you're aware, I am currently co-leading ICF's ethics community of practice. And as such, have been asked to present on a number of different topics. And this one was one that generated a lot of interest. So I said, oh, well, of course it makes sense to do it here too. So excited about diving into it with everyone. We will talk about using our code of ethics to inform our choices in terms of technology. I've got some case studies to discuss, hence that, okay, we want to have everybody live and talking. And we'll debrief insights from those conversations. Wrap up with talking about doing the right thing. Time for Q&A at the end. So first off, I'm going to bring up the Code of Ethics, and this is straight out of the Code of Ethics. And I've highlighted a couple of things. One of the things I like to say, we talk about HIPAA regulations. Is everybody familiar with HIPAA? Coaching confidentiality is so much stronger than HIPAA. I mean, so much stronger. I think of HIPAA and, protecting your medical information, that kind of thing. I think half the world has access to my medical records. Every time I go to somebody, oh yeah, we got it right here, no problem. So it's kind of interesting. So it's even higher level of confidentiality. Our ethics also call on us to be super clear from the get-go of what information is exchanged and how it's exchanged. This comes up most commonly when you have a sponsor involved, somebody who's paying for the coaching other than the person who's engaging in the coaching. So it's really, really important to explore that ahead of time and be clear on that. And then, of course, any exception, we talk about unreported crimes or a threat of harm to person or property. Being the exceptions. Then it also, talks to us about how we take care of our records. So where we have them, how long we store them, how we dispose of them, and making sure the way we do that promotes confidentiality. If you dig into the ethics interpretive statements, and who's familiar with those? Okay, awesome, love it. So this is when ICF updated their code of ethics. They went further and added a lot of extra information, explanation of everything. It took me 10 years to get something in there, and I'm so excited it's finally there. So first off, we know that confidentiality is a huge factor for creating that safe space, for having the trust and rapport that we want to have. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal with all of the technologies. And this applies to the use of our technologies. What are we using? Where are we using it? How are we using it? Was that a question? Okay, so it has to be ensured. It takes vigilance on our part as coaches, and we have to take appropriate precautions, specifically when we're using emails, online mail, chat sessions, etc. How are we making sure confidentiality for the client is protected? It also speaks to any identifying information in social media. So sometimes coaches are going into their Facebook page and saying, hey, I just had this conversation with a client. They're putting information in there that doesn't belong there, which is interesting in and of itself. So making sure that. Then, this is the big one. This is the one I worked on for 10 years. If you're an internal coach, it is not okay to take notes on a company-owned computer device. Whether you are internal or external, it's not okay to use that company-owned email. You've got to have a conversation with the client, because here's the bottom line. If I email the client notes on their company-owned email, that email is owned by the company. and can be accessed by the company. So the scenario that we presented for this, and this is a true case, a coach had notes on a company-owned computer. The manager went to the coach and said, I want to know what you're talking about with this person on my team. The coach said, well, I can't tell you that, it's confidential. So the manager went to the IT department and said, give me the notes off that computer. And the IT department did. The manager was within their rights. The IT department was within their rights because all of that information is owned by the company. It is the coach who violated confidentiality by having the notes on the company-owned device. Even going so far as if you're talking with the client and they're on a company telephone, sometimes company telephones get monitored or recorded randomly. So I have a client that their company randomly records phone calls. So what do? We talk on their personal cell phone. Even though they're at work and this is considered part of their work time, it's a cell phone that they own personally so that it can't be randomly recorded. We have to address these things. As coaches, we've got to be aware of them. We've got to address them. So here's the first scenario we're going to talk about. Imagine for a minute, an internal coach takes notes on their work computer. They hadn't discussed it with their client. The manager asks them what was discussed, and the coach says it's confidential. So I'm giving you that case scenario that we just talked about. Here's what I'm going to ask you to discuss, and I'll put you in breakout rooms. When can client information be shared? Where can notes be kept? Specifically, what information can be shared and with who? So do me a favor, capture those questions. If you want to take a screenshot, if you just want to jot them down on a piece of paper really quickly, because what will happen is I'll put you in breakout rooms and invite you to have that conversation with each other and then come back. I'm going to set us up with 2 rooms so that you can go into that room and have the conversation. So has everybody got these jotted down on there? Okay, so what'll happen is in your breakout room, you're going to be asked to decide who the spokesperson is going to be. That's going to be the one that shares what the room decides or talks about when you come back into the big room. Okay. And then what will happen is you'll have your discussion in your breakout room. You will come back to the main room here. And then what we're going to do is invite each group to share what they came up with. We'll talk about it and debrief it. Sound good? Okay, I am opening up your breakout room, so you can just click to join. All right, spokespersons. Which room wants to start with learnings and insights from your conversations?
I can start.
Okay.
Learnings from our conversation, there were 2 things. One, the only thing that you can share without consent from your client with the sponsor would be the date and time. And that includes if you are coaching a child. So unless there's a explicit permission from the child that you're coaching, there's nothing additional that you can share. So that was definitely one of my learnings. Insights was really thinking about how you keep notes in the conversations and the pros and cons of each of them, and the need to have that identified upfront with your client and that they're okay with how you're doing that. So if they want an email summary and that's something that you committed to, knowing which email that you can be sending that to. And based on the notes I kept, that's my summary.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And for our other group.
I would say, I think the biggest insight was storing notes. So not being able to use a platform like Google or Google Forms, I think was probably the most insightful because of privacy issues. So in that conversation, we really just surmised that you would be able to use your own personal computer to take notes and kind of house that information. Another conversation we had, and perhaps you can clarify this, is when it comes to sharing information that outside of what the client gives permission to share, the only other times we think that we would have to or be able to share is if it were a risk to the client's health, safety, or society, or maybe perhaps in cases of a subpoena, but wondering how far that could really go. So that was another conversation we had.
Yeah, it was just good. I talked about an unreported crime or a threat of harm, and the threat of harm can be to person or property, either the client or other, as far as that goes. The subpoena is definitely a question that's come up. While it is extremely unusual to have a court case and have that subpoena, it has come up, and coaching notes are not protected, which speaks to, do I want to keep notes? How long do I want to keep notes? Where do I want to keep notes? That kind of thing, and having a policy around that.
Right.
Yeah. Good, good. Other thoughts or questions? All right, y'all ready for the next one then? Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
Well, so this literally just occurred to me right now, because we were talking about what we're allowed to share with client permission, because for example, there have been times when I've had a client share something with me and I recognize that what they shared was something that would be very helpful for lots of other people to hear. And so I've asked permission to share it specifically on Facebook in a group, not like my public thing, but in a group. Or there've been times when I've said, hey, can I share this on a public thing? And they've given me permission. And some of them have even said, and you're welcome to use my name.
Okay. So
Right,
as long as you have permission, that's what counts.
Okay. Cause I was like, because there
Yeah.
have been times when I've been like, client so-and-so, and I tag them because they're like, tag me too and do all of this. Like, I want people to know that I have a coach. I'm totally cool with that. Like,
Yeah, a lot of people see it as, gosh, I have
benefit.
the corner office with window because I have a coach.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And a lot of people are totally fine with it. And when it's an insight that is really cool, they're very happy to have it shared. It's getting permission.
Yeah. Cool. Good to know.
Nice. Okay, I've got another one for everybody. So you have a coach that uses an online platform for coaching sessions. The client where they worked had a firewall and they were unable to use it. So the coach offered to meet on Skype, and the coach also kept their phone nearby with Siri on it. Some people use Alexa, some people use Siri. Okay, everybody got your scenario? So then, questions. What do you want to consider when choosing technologies to use? Which technologies do you think are secure? And which technologies do you think pose risks? It'll be the same process. You'll go in, you'll have your conversation, and then we'll have somebody report back. So everybody ready for this?
Mhm.
And I'm inviting Zoom to recreate breakout rooms. So those are set up. I will pause the recording. All right, so we're going to hear back from the groups from your breakout sessions. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to.
Okay.
All right. So in terms of what we want to consider when choosing technologies, we talked about who has access to those technologies, how safe they are. So we talked about, one of the things we discussed was, how well, I guess in terms of for the online platform. So for example, coaching over Zoom, having your waiting room enabled, things like that, making sure that you have control over who comes in the room and not, kind of thing. In terms of, the Siri and Alexa question, what's safe and not. My cell phone is always my iPhone is always nearby me, and I do have Siri enabled. But my understanding, because I talked to my boyfriend about that, and maybe you have different insight than he does, but he said all they're ever listening for is their name, and they don't do anything else with the information unless you've told Apple or Amazon or Google, depending on your smart device, that they have permission to record more information than that, which I have not.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding from other people, and I'm not a tech expert myself, is that you want to disable Alexa or Siri while you're coaching, or put the phone in a different room. That's the conversation I've heard. Yes, they're only listening for their name. There are also some other keywords that they listen for. And in terms of giving permission, I think sometimes it's hidden in all those big forms that we just accept without reading.
True.
So I'm like, I don't know what I've given permission for.
Right. But then I also talked about, well, and that's why I always have earbuds in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use my speakers at all. So even if it wanted to, it can't hear anything except my side of the conversation.
Well, and that's a big piece too, though, because on your side of the conversation, you're rephrasing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So interesting.
Yes. So I think we came to the conclusion that if we're going to use technologies that we aren't 100% certain on the level of security, that we at least have the conversation with the client, because sometimes the level of security isn't as important to them as getting the information. So if my client doesn't have the ability to record the call themselves, well, I don't record it to the Zoom cloud. I always record it to my computer, but then I can't email it to them because the file's too big. So I just have the conversation. I'll upload it to an unlisted YouTube thing. Are you okay with that? And they go, yep. I just want to be able to access my recording. I don't care if somebody else happens upon it. Oh, darn, they might learn that I'm trying to get better in business. Okay, I just want to make sure you understood that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There are services for sending large files. And then I also think about things like we have Basecamp.
Okay.
Where you can go to, and have it protected who can access things in Basecamp. So there's limited what you can do on a free Basecamp account, but it's a possibility.
Sure.
So
I
different
have
things like that.
Is there a list of resources available for us to look into? Like these are different platforms to look at?
You know what I do? I look at what ICF uses.
Okay.
ICF uses Basecamp. They use Zoom. I look at that. I look at what other people talk about using. So, and it's, I think it's really significant too. I mean, it sounds simple. You just get online and do a search and find out online, what are people saying about the security of something? And then have a conversation with the client.
How common is it to record the sessions?
I think only for when you're doing a recording to go after a credential. And the reason I say that, think about it this way, Michelle, if I say to you, I want to record the coaching sessions, you'll probably be nice and say, okay, but then you'll forever filter yourself, not knowing where those recordings are going to end up.
Right. Okay.
if you remember like the different personality styles,
Mhm.
I'm a pleaser. Of course, I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to get out of that coaching relationship as fast as I can. And you're never going to know why, because I'm not going to tell you. So, yeah, it's, of course, when you pursue a credential, you have to record. The other thing I'll say about that is when you submit a recording for a credential, it's audio only. So there's no cameras on it. And then the other thing that happens is you avoid even using, for example, a last name, and just use a first name in your conversation. And then the transcript will just say coach and client.
But now ICF gives you the opportunity to do those recording sessions, right? To get it for the credential.
Yeah, so what they do, ICF has a program called Peer Coaching where you can sign up with, depending on what it is, you pay like $50, something like that. And you're assigned a coach and somebody is assigned to be your coach, and it's considered a barter. What they did is they found that a lot of clients don't want to be recorded, and so a lot of coaches were struggling to have somebody they could coach to do a recording to submit for their credential. So they set one up very specifically that they were going to be recorded sessions for that purpose.
Right.
So it's a possibility. I also think we give you a base camp for all CCC graduates. We've got a lot of graduates who will barter and do an exchange of coaching. So that's another way you can do that. You just go to the base camp and say, hey, I want to do a barter. Who's interested in trading coaching? Good. All right, let's hear from the other, or Jenny, are you complete on what you had?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so let's hear from the other room. What'd you come away with?
So what we came away with is that we actually spent a lot of time talking about what we know we can use, what are ones that we would need to do more research on to determine if we could use, and which ones are the technologies that we know we cannot use. And so I think it was already mentioned, Skype, Siri, Alexa, Facebook, those are always like, no, that's a big no, just because of privacy concerns with those. And we talked about Zoom was one that we felt comfortable with, knowing the privacy around that. And that was, I think, mentioned the different things that you can do within Zoom to ensure the privacy. And then we were also wondering about, would FaceTime work? Apple phone to Apple phone, or would WhatsApp, is that an application? But recognize that that would take some additional research to determine if it satisfied the security and confidentiality that is needed in these agreements.
Yeah, and I did a quick internet search during that conversation, and it talked about what was being shared in your discussion of being encrypted and that kind of thing. So the first blush look at it was, yeah, these have a lot of potential in terms of being secure options.
I was going to say, I've heard of a few different coaches using WhatsApp as a platform, especially internationally.
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp is connected to Facebook now, isn't it? Isn't it owned by Facebook?
And that's one of the things that we were talking about, because Facebook is on the no-go side of the spectrum. So
half the battle is just figuring out what's okay and what's not okay, right?
mm-hmm.
So interesting. Good.
I also mentioned, and I know I was in the other group, but I also mentioned Google Voice. Not sure if that's a problem, but using Google Voice because it's a different number as, having those conversations. I haven't heard of any issues with it, but I know a lot of people started using it. I don't know if anyone else has.
I Google Voice, I have no idea what the pros and the cons are. So interesting. Okay, are we ready to look at the next one? Awesome. One more thing. So here's the scenario. The coach uses Zoom. They keep their cameras on during the coaching session. The client noticed the coach's reaction to what they said and apologized to the coach for their statement. Interesting, right? Pro con of cameras. So the question for you, what are the pros of using cameras and what are the cons of using cameras, and how are you going to decide? Everybody got your questions? Is that a yes, you're good to go?
Yes.
Okay, so I will, let's see, I'm gonna stop our,
The facial expression,
okay, go ahead.
facial expressions are a pro and a con. There are some clients that having just the audio and not the camera, they will be more transparent. Some sort of safety and only talking instead of also having the eye contact. It's important that you follow the client's lead on preference. And a con, this is what I've learned, is that if I'm taking notes on video, you're going to see the side of my head or my part. So, and needing to be cognizant of how you're in the frame if you're on camera. And now I have to jump. Bye. Thank you. This is great.
Thank you, appreciate it. So awesome, let's hear from the other group then.
I don't think we forgot to establish a spokesperson because I accidentally left the room mid-sentence. I think we came up with a lot of the same things that the other group came up with. Was, you know, facial expressions can be a pro and a con. Some people will prefer to be with camera on, some will prefer off. I think one of the differences that came up, and I think it's because you presented it, was, you know, try it both ways. Which I haven't really done. I just said, hey, what would you prefer to do? And most of my clients are very, very, very relational, and they want. So I haven't offered them to say, hey, why don't we try it both ways? So I will be doing that. Yeah.
See how
So
it works.
yep. So I think we had a lot of the same things, and it really came down to, you know, having the conversation with the client, what they're comfortable with and what you're comfortable with as a coach, and establishing that together.
Nice. Great conversations. Okay. In our code of ethics, it calls on us to do the right thing. What does that mean to us here? Discuss what we're doing with the clients. And of course, before we're offering up a technology, be researching it, make sure, compare what you're learning with a review of your ethics and interpretive statements to make sure you're on the right track. I do want to give you a number of resources. So ICF provides a lot. If you're a member of ICF, it's great to access this. So they have a video series on the Code of Ethics. Of course, you can access the Code of Ethics itself and the ethics interpretive statements. In addition to that, one of the requirements of membership is continuing education, including continuing education in ethics. And so there's a complimentary course online. You can go to their FAQs, see those. If you have something come up and you have a question, there's a hotline you can call and ask, or contact and ask via email. And then they do have a review process if there's an ethical complaint where that gets submitted. We do free quarterly webinars at ICF with the ethics community of practice. There are, I think there's 10 communities of practice in all different areas, one of them being ethics. As an ICF member, if you are one, you can join all of them, and they all do quarterly webinars. It's a fabulous benefit. The one we've got coming up in the ethics community of practice is called Stump the Experts. And so we have a panel of 6 experts and case studies that they're going to be talking about. We also have an online discussion in Basecamp, and whoever wants to join that can just send me an email and I can add you to it. And then we do what's called a water cooler discussion. It's just a small group of people, and we get together on a monthly basis and talk about whatever people want to talk about in terms of ethics and scenarios there. So definitely lots of opportunities. Take advantage of them. So excited to have had the conversation here today, and definitely interested in staying connected and keeping these conversations alive. So thank you, everyone. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry my phone died, and by the time I got here, you guys are ending already, but it was fun meeting everybody.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Nice meeting you too.
Hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.